Hey, in this lesson, we are going to set up the fetch request. So this is in order to make sure that our API key is working and that we get the path right. And then we're going to hook up the rest of our HTML elements in the DOM in order to make the request output, trigger the request, output the content into the visible page area. So for this, we're going to have a function, and this function can just be called ySearch, or we want to call it whatever you want, and passing in the event data. So in case we do need that later on. And all it's going to have right now within it, so first we'll set up a URL, and this URL is going to be, it's another fairly long one, so it's https and colon, of course, and / www Google, it's Google APIs actually, .com, / YouTube, / v3 / search. And then this is where we enter in the search parameters, what we want to return back, and we want to return back, so the part that we want to return back is a snippet, and the other thing that we want to pass in is a key. So we do have that key, of course, so we can add in that key, so whatever name that we've given it, we can add it into the string. And then also Q, and this is the query, this is the search term that we're querying for. And for right now, we can just call to and call back test. And you also have another parameter as well, and that's max results. And what we'll do is we'll output that right now into the document. So using query selector, selecting the element with the class of output, we're going to update its text content to whatever the contents of URL is. And then we'll copy and paste that URL and try out the URL for this to make sure that it is working. So it's fairly long there. So just go ahead and copy that in. Go over to your browser and paste it in. And if you get a bunch of data being returned back there, so you're good to go. You've got the URL right, you've got your key working, and this is be the first request. And you see there's all this JSON information. So the objective of the upcoming lessons is we're going to parse through this JSON information, and we're going to make use of it and output it on our page. So this it was an important part because it is important to test and make sure that everything is coming in properly. So we know we're good to go and we're ready to create our fetch request. So going back into the JavaScript, we've got our URL there and we can make our fetch request. So creating fetch requires the first parameter that it requires is the URL that we're making the request to. And this is promise based. So once it makes the connection, it retrieves the data, then it runs the function. And this function is going to be returning back some content. So we've got our response data that's being returned back there. And within that response data, there's an option to work with the JSON object and turn it into a JavaScript object to use it. So we're going to do that where we're taking that response data and we're using the JSON method in order to turn it back as a JavaScript object. And then we're placing one more promise there after that, which is where we're going to actually work with the data. So this is where we've got our finalized data, and then we can do something with that data coming in. And I'll show you how to work with that in the upcoming lesson. So for now, we're just going to output that content into the console. So now when I type use search, you can see that we get back all of this data. We've got 20 items there that have been returned back. And we're going to use the upcoming lessons to parse through this and to make use of the content that's coming back in here and then output it within our HTML page. So that's all still to come. So the important part of this lesson, make sure that you do get that proper URL, that you do have content there, and you're going to be ready to move on to the next part. So once you are able to make a connection, and once you've got the URL correct, you're ready to move on to the next part. So do try that out, and you could also output into the console, or you could just simply manually copy it, update the API key, and paste it in your browser. So either way, make sure that it is working, and you're ready to move on to the next part. So that's coming up, and making use of the data that's coming back, as well as hook up the search variable within the input field so that we can search for different things other than just test.